when I just started photography a long time ago, I also wanted to know what camera and camera settings my favorite photographers were using, because it helps with the whole learning process, you know? But over the years, I've come to realize that most of the time, what camera settings you use doesn't really matter. It really doesn't. I mean, look, before you start writing a book in the comments about how I'm wrong here, sometimes, of course, it does matter what settings you use, if you're trying to capture something very specific, for example. But you know what? I'll show you some of my published and award-winning photos. I'll tell you what camera settings I used, and then I hope you'll understand what I'm trying to say here. And you'll see that you can even use the wrong camera settings and it'll be fine. It doesn't matter. So I just shaved a few hairs here and I cut myself somehow and now it doesn't stop bleeding. Why? Yeah, I'm just gonna let it bleed, I guess. I'm sorry for that. Okay, anyway, so let's start with a portrait of a gas station clerk I met somewhere on a road trip in Northern California. It's a photo from a photo series that I made in 2013-14. You can check it out on my website with the whole story behind it. And it was my first photo series that actually got picked up and published. This photo specifically was taken with a Canon 5D Mark III. And these are the settings that I used to take the photo. 85mm at f1.8. ISO 100 and 1/1000th of a second shutter. Now, when I was in photography college studying photography, my teachers always told me that when you take a portrait, nose and ears should be in focus. And what's not in focus here? Exactly, nose and ears, out of focus. I shot this with a long focal length, 85mm at f1.8, so the depth of field is razor thin, but at that moment, I felt like that's what I wanted, and I still feel that way. I think it looks great, even though, according to a lot of photographers and teachers, what I did is wrong. But this photo and the whole photo series got published and exhibited, and it kind of started my career. And the thing is that I could have used a dozen different camera setting combinations here and they would have all looked good. ISO 400 and an aperture of 2.8, for example, would have looked fine. And then the nose and ears would probably be in focus, but would that have made the photo so much better? Well, for the people who don't like nose and ears out of focus, it would have, of course, but that's purely subjective. ISO 400 would have also added more grain to the image, but I add grain to my photos anyway. So, you see, the image as a whole, the story you're trying to capture, is a lot more important than what settings you use. This photo would have been just as good taken with different camera settings and even a different focal length. Here's another photo from that same series. A landscape. I love the colors here, and I get a bit nostalgic when I look at these photos. It was a great trip. But anyway, so again, it's an 85mm because I couldn't get any closer. ISO 100, shutter 1/2000th of a second, and aperture f1.8. What? 1.8 for a landscape? Yes, 1.8 for a landscape. Sue me. Again, everybody would say that I'm using the wrong settings here. A landscape, you should shoot at aperture 9 or 11 so that everything is in focus. That's what most people would say, most photographers and teachers. But look, it was very busy on the road that day and I didn't have time to stop for several minutes, so I stopped real quick, got the shot, didn't think about settings or anything. I got back in my car and off I went. That was the only way to get the shot. And yes, the foreground here is not in focus. Do I care? No. Do any of the people who've published the photo care that the foreground is not in focus? No. Would the photo have been better shot with an aperture of f9, for example? Maybe, for people who really can't stand a foreground that's a bit blurry. You know, I feel like social media and YouTube lens reviewers have created this weird thing where everything has to be perfect when you take a photo. Perfect corner to corner sharpness, no noise. Like, who cares if there's a little bit of noise in your photo, or who cares that the corners are not tack sharp? None of my clients ever cared. The only people who care is pixel peepers. Again, the whole image and the story as a whole, that's important, and not the camera settings that you use to capture it. I could have taken this photo again with different camera settings and the outcome would have been the same. Photo got published and, you know, me happy. Usually the people who keep insisting that there can't be any noise and everything has to be tack sharp, well, those people usually aren't the best photographers anyway. But I didn't say that. Here's another photo, an urban-scape kind of photo. Again, f1.8, and I don't know, I felt like shooting at 1.8, so shallow depth of field would emphasize that foggy feeling. Okay, and you know what? We were talking about noise before. Let's talk about noise a little bit more. Look, I remember when I was on an assignment in Africa a long time ago, I was moving from dark indoor areas to super bright and sunny outdoor areas all the time. And sometimes I forgot to lower the ISO. So I shot a lot of photos at ISO 800, 1600, but then with a super fast shutter speed outside. And using an ISO of 800 or 1600 creates some noise that's visible in the sky, for example. But some noise doesn't ruin a photo, especially because there's also a difference between luminance noise and colored noise. Luminance noise looks more like grain, you know, it's colorless, black and white, and it doesn't bother me unless it's super strong. Now, colored noise can be very ugly. I also find it ugly, but it usually only happens in low light situations, in the shadows. Luminance noise you can see everywhere, and that's why it also looks more like grain than noise, if you know what I mean. But again, it's this thing that social media and YouTube has created, that everything has to look perfect, super clean. A lot of people these days have been brainwashed into thinking that a bit of noise, that grainy texture is bad. It isn't. And unless they ask for something very specific, it doesn't matter to publishers or clients. They don't care if I get the shot at ISO 100 or 400 or 800 or if I shoot at f1.8 or 4.5, as long as I get the shot. Settings only matter in the context of getting the right exposure and, well, also expressing yourself, your style as a photographer. But that means that it's all subjective, you know? So next time you see an image that you really like and you like the photographer, don't focus too much on the settings they used. No, look at the image as a whole, and whether it was shot at f2.8 or 3.5 or even 7, it doesn't matter. Some people like a super shallow depth of field, some people hate it. That's how it works. So in the grand scheme of things, camera settings don't matter, as long as your exposure is correct. And at some point you'll develop your own style anyway. Don't look at a photo and think, oh, he shot with those settings, so I have to do the same. No, you don't have to do the same. You're you. You do you. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say here, and I hope it helps. So just take your camera now, go out, shoot something with the settings that you like. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next one.